So it is an absolute honor to be with you. And what's interesting is I was walking through here this morning, I noticed a lot of people, and I said, I know these people. But then I realized it was the clothes. Many of you are wearing the same thing you wore last night. And I know that you can get a PhD in sleep deprivation by coming to Las Vegas, and many of you have accomplished it. So anyway, thank you for allowing me to be with you today. Let's make sure my clicker's clicking. Ta-da. Here's what I want to talk about. I have a couple of things to give you. I've been asked to give you 2 or 3 things, 3 or 4 things that you might be able to take with you to use to make a difference in your life and in your business. Now, I do work as an executive coach, as I guess you'll determine, a professional speaker, and I've had the chance to run a business over the course of 20 years in the exercise equipment business. I was doing work in about 70 different countries. And over the course of 20 years, we built a business that grew quite successfully. Now, it probably would have been a lot more successful, except I was running it. I didn't know what I didn't know, but I tell you what I've learned over the course of that 20 years, and the work I've done with large corporations and small in terms of what unlocks greatness or performance or peak performance in individuals and organizations. I've sort of been obsessed about performance, wondering what it is about 2 organizations, 2 real estate companies, 2 realtors, 2 families, 2 universities. What are the distinctions that drives one particular group to do really well, others to struggle, when they're probably equally capable? So I want to tell you that it has a lot to do with language and words. Words are powerful. Words have power. Your words have power. Your words paint pictures. You probably know words create families. Words can start wars. Words build companies. And I would be so bold as to say this great company started with some words that built into a conversation, and the conversation has continued. And the only distinction of leadership is being able to plant your flag and put your word into the future and do something that wasn't going to happen unless you planted your flag and put your word out there. So I want to give you a couple of words. Will you accept those words? All right, so here's a test. It's getting close to lunchtime, yes? You're doing well so far. And the only thing between you and the food table is me. So I'm going to ask you, if I promise you in the next 40 minutes or so with gusts to 50, if I give you my absolute best, will you give me your best? Will you be present? Okay, do me a favor. Take your index finger, and I want you to poke the person beside you. I would say, look, give him your best. I got one eye on you, and I got one eye on him. I want to see you raise your game. And if you don't have anybody beside you, poke yourself. But don't do that too much because there's cameras in the room. So I think anytime I have a chance to go out and speak to groups, I think it's really important to impart something on people that allows them to take it that very day and use it that very day. Otherwise, it goes away. So in order to do that, I think part of the requirement on my behalf is to let you know what I've learned. Can I share a couple things I've learned in the 18 hours I've been in Vegas? That wasn't optional. This is yes, this is no. I'll give it to you anyway. So as I walked around in the last 12 hours, I was at a Starbucks. A woman arrived, it must have been a professional dog walker with about 15 dogs, German shepherds. There was a collie in there and a Great Dane. As I sat there drinking my coffee, getting ready for you, I had an aha moment. I recognized this. For the most part, a dog is always in the push-up position. Right? Here's another thing I observed. You've probably seen this over the course of these last couple of days where somebody's walking down one of the aisleways or through the malls and they're holding flyers and they're passing out things to tell you about their show, their event, what's going on for them. Yes? And what they want you to come see. Have familiarity with that? So if you observe human behavior and communication, what that individual is actually saying to them is, here, you throw this away. Because that's exactly what happens. I will give you another reality. So I say you can get a master's in sleep deprivation. I certainly got one. I have to admit, I was at the blackjack table last night until the sun arose this morning. Honesty is a good thing, yes? But I can tell you, I know I don't have a gambling problem. I'm addicted to sitting in a semicircle. Okay, last learning. Can I give it to you? So yesterday morning, I'm with my wife and my children, getting ready to take this flight to come to spend time with One Reality, a fantastic group. And we were reflecting on life together, my desire to use the gifts I believe I was given to help other people. And we talked about the experiences we had over time, and I said, you know, can you think about this One Reality group, what they stand for, opening doors, one team. And I have a chance to come to Las Vegas and participate and take a keynote stage opportunity. I said, honey, in your wildest dreams, could you ever have imagined that for me? And she said, honey, you're not in my wildest dreams. That hurts. But honesty will set you free, yes? I will carry on to the program and also tell you, because I was up all night last night, Stolichnaya vodka in a smart water bottle is very effective. So as I mentioned, having a chance to travel many places. It was about 8 or 9 years ago. I was studying aspects of performance, and there's a field of study called ontology. And what ontology is the study of is the way of being, is how you lead your life. It's your habits. And this aspect was drilling down to leadership, and we were in Mexico, and the curriculum was pretty powerful, 8, 9, might have even been 10 days. And in that period of time, the faculty was great universities. Harvard comes to mind, and I'll speak about that. Individuals from the Air Force, from the Marines, major corporations, scientists, and maybe 300 or 400 people in the room. One man stood up from the Harvard Business School, and out of the 9 days, this is the distinction that really stayed with me. Now, if there was such a thing as a dictionary still available, if you opened up a dictionary in terms of professor, this cat would have come to mind. 6'1", curly hair, lean, glasses, suit that was a bit too large and a bit wrinkled. But when he spoke, people really listened. He had served in 3 White House administrations. He stood before the group and said, if you take nothing else from this 9 days, let me tell you this. Up until a few years ago, for my entire life, now the time he was speaking, he was probably 70, I've been out of integrity. And I listened, and I looked, and I said, if you looked at this man's credentials, who he has served, what he's accomplished, what he's published, who he's around, the fact he's on this stage, he says he's out of integrity. So he gave us what I'll call an integrity test. He asked everybody in the room, much like I will ask you, he said, give me a show of hands. If you think you're a person of integrity, raise your hand. So if you would please, if you think you're a person of integrity, raise your hand. You did exactly how I did and the rest of the group did. And he said, well, that's probably true because we each have our own version or model of integrity. He said, let me give you a definition. So think about this for a moment. Integrity is doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it, in the manner that you know it needs to be done. If you can't do it, you tell the person you can't do it, and you ask the person what it is you have to do to clean up any mess you've caused by not meeting your commitment. That was his definition. Now he said, if you meet that criteria, you're a person of integrity. If you meet that criteria, like I'll ask you, show your hands. That's pretty good. You must have been to some of my other seminars. Let me take it a step further. So you probably have people in your life who say to you, I'll call you back, I'll send you the email, I'll send you the book, I'll follow up, I'll come to the graduation, we'll get together over the holidays, we'll have dinner, we'll have lunch. And you probably say to yourself, never happened. Do you know those people? Could it be possible that occasionally you're one of those people? Yes. Because we want to be liked, yes? Best of intentions, we're going to do it. Or often somebody asks us to do something, we say yes, even though we want to say no, because it seems to be more painful. We'll say yes and we'll make it up later or they'll forget. When I applied this to my life, I recognized that I was putting my word in places quite frequently and I wasn't following up. I became a person who was out of integrity. You couldn't take me at my word. When that hit me, it was like a ton of bricks. How often have I said something to a friend, to a child, I'll get back to you, I'll do this and I'll do that, with best of intentions, never happened. The time to make a cost-benefit decision on a yes in your life is before you make it. It's before you say it. Many of us make the cost-benefit decision after we've said yes. They'll forget, it won't matter, it's not that important, doesn't mean much. It means everything. He went on to tell us this: who you are is your word, nothing more and nothing less. Now, the last component of this is probably the most critical, and has been for me. Have you ever made a promise to yourself, not told anybody else, and broke the promise? I'll go back to the gym. We're going to go to church. I'm going to strengthen my relationship. I'm going to get up earlier. I'm going to make more calls. Whatever it happens to be. Nobody else knows. It doesn't happen, and it doesn't seem that bad. You know anybody like that? If not, just look at me. And what you will find, or what I have found, is when we break our word to ourselves and don't think it's that bad, we tend to hold other people to a higher standard. You get frustrated when people don't do the things they say they're going to do for you? You'll often see a mirror reflection of yourself, and your aggravation of what they're not doing is a reflection of perhaps something you're not doing. So one of the most powerful lessons I got from that man in the great state of whatever it was in Mexico was who you are is your word. Let that sink in, please. Let me give you the next word. Who can pronounce that for me? Exactly right, all of you. Genshai. It was a number of years ago, I was in Austria doing a research project around words and performance, and we were studying the work of Viktor Frankl. Some of you would know the man who was trapped in a Nazi, or caught and placed in a Nazi concentration camp. And we were there to visit the family. He wrote a book that's infamous called Man's Search for Meaning. What we wanted to understand was how was it someone was able to interpret their world to find good in what might be considered bad or evil. So on the very first night we were in, I was with a colleague, and we went into a fabric store. And the fabric store was because my colleague was looking to buy some special silk for his daughter who wanted to make her own wedding dress. And a very interesting man, an Indian man, came out from behind his desk, and he introduced himself. And he said, "Welcome to my shop. Let me show you what we have." And he took us on a fabulous tour of this very small shop of all the fine materials that he had, and told a story around each. And he was extremely inquisitive about us. Tell me about your life. What are you doing here? What are you trying to achieve? Why did you come here to Austria? Why is it you're in my shop? And then he looked at us both and he said, "I've been waiting for you. You were supposed to come here today." He then walked around the counter and he took out this large book and he placed it in front of us. And I looked down and there were all these autographs. And he said, "I'd be honored if you would sign my book." I looked and I was eager to sign, and my friend held me back and said, "Look at the names." Mother Teresa's name popped out. Viktor Frankl's name popped out. And he held me back and said, "No." And I listened to my colleague and he said, "We don't deserve to be on that list." Without missing a beat, Pravin walked out from behind the counter, started to pull down the shades, turned out the lights, and put "closed" on the door of his business. And he said, "It's time for dinner. Come with me." We've been in the store maybe 45 minutes. Never seen this man before. Turns out my colleague couldn't go, but I went. And over the course of a sumptuous Indian dinner in Vienna, Austria, the man told me his story, asked me more about my story, and he told me this. One of the most important lessons he had learned from the amazing people who had come into his life and come into his store was Genshai. Never treat another person small, and most importantly, never treat yourself small. He clearly observed the action of us treating ourselves small in front of him. And he went on to say, we tend to look for what's wrong as opposed to what's right. We tend to see limitations instead of possibilities. And he said, you are entitled and deserve to be on this list of greats because inside of you is greatness. And he reminded me something we all know. We wouldn't be as hard on other people as we tend to be on ourselves. So the important lesson was don't treat another person small, see the possibilities inside of them, and most importantly, don't treat yourself small. Let me give you the next one. This one's more, perhaps a reminder. Maybe all of this is reminder. The key word about reminder is to bring back to your mind something that you perhaps have already known. And in the world of empathy, empathy is walking the path of another. Many of us are pretty busy being busy, and perhaps we don't always understand what it is like to be in the moccasins of another person. I've learned over the course of my career and life and the work and the research I do is deep down, people want to know that they're loved, they measure up, and they're making a difference. And I could simplify it and say what they really want is to be understood. Everybody wants to be understood. And I want to introduce you to a man who really taught me that lesson in a very, very powerful way. This is my brother Mike. Now, Mike and I are Irish Catholic kids born in Brooklyn, New York. Any New Yorkers here? Come on, somebody drop an F-bomb for me. So as Irish Catholic kids, you learn a couple things. One is you're born with an inherent quality of guilt and a high propensity for alcohol. And kidding aside, we did grow up in an alcoholic environment. It was quite abusive, would be a fair word. Now, Mike did not receive, or I'd say he wasn't the recipient of the abuse that perhaps was practiced on me, but he was the observer. And in that environment, which is the only environment you know, you tend to think that's the way the world is. But through the course of life, this cat seemed to crack the code. He was the king on his homecoming court. He was the star of his football team. He married the homecoming queen. I hated those guys. Didn't you hate those guys growing up? Had a beautiful home and a beautiful family, was in medical equipment sales for a number of years, did extremely well. But there was something going on with him that I knew wasn't quite right. I couldn't put my finger on it. He was on the East Coast. I was living on the West Coast. So a couple of years ago on a December morning, he phoned me, and it was quite courageous. He said, I just want to tell you I made the decision to go into alcohol rehab. Now, it wasn't really a surprise. It was probably more a surprise that he had the courage to call. And I said to him, man, I'm really, really proud of you. I will come see you. So he was on a 60-day program in a remote town in Iowa. Anybody here from Iowa? With huge respect, the area he was in the western part of the state was so remote, the cows were lonely. It was desolate. I found him in this property, 10 o'clock one evening when I drove in from Des Moines, and it was an old senior citizen center that turned into a rehab facility. All men. And you would have thought it was sort of like an animal house or a dorm room when you went in because of the music being playing, what was on the TV screens, clothes everywhere, food everywhere, and I found my brother. And he was about 30 days into the program. If anybody's had familiarity with this type of relationship, well, the great news was his eyes were clear, his voice was articulate, he spoke succinctly, and it was like having a whole new person in my life. That 30-minute conversation I heard from him was magical. It was like having a whole new person. So we decided the next day we were going to go into Des Moines, find a place to exercise. We did, and we went out for dinner. So I'm with him across a bar from all types of spirits, wondering how we were going to do, and he did just fine. And I said to him as I listened, he spoke more to me those 2 or 3 days than he had in 25 years. And I said to him, Mike, for my whole life I've been campaigning to be the world's greatest brother. And dude, I have failed. Maybe I should have thought of this sooner, but why don't I just ask you? If you were me, what would you do to become the world's greatest brother? And he looked at me, Darth Vader-like, and he said, man, you are so blind. He said, I've been jealous of you my whole life, and you never saw it. I didn't have empathy. Now, jealous of me. Now, I had my own version of success, but by today's standards, my mountain of success is a molehill. And most of us who are on pursuit or a quest to do something spend more time thinking about what has to be fixed and what's wrong as opposed to what's right. I was that person at that time. He said, you got a blind spot. Life lesson, right? 61st day on the flight back to North Carolina from Iowa, he drinks. And for the next 2 years, he attempts to rehab himself, detox himself, and goes through a series of events where he has seizures. His wife divorces him not because she didn't love him, but she could no longer enable him. His sons wouldn't speak to him, and he's living in and out of extended stay hotels. I convince him somehow to come visit me and his nephews and my wife in California. He agrees, with the caveat that I promised not to coach him, nor try to do any form of intervention. I said, look, I'll even have beer in the fridge, man. Just come, your family. So it's the day before Thanksgiving. And I'm concerned he spends the 12 hours prior to his flight in the airport because he can't exactly remember how to do it. And he's afraid he's going to miss his flight. He makes his flight. He makes his connection. I take my children at the time, and I was driving a minivan, I'll have you know. And they're 6 and 5. If anybody has children, you know those are magical ages. Sometimes more magical than others. So we go pick up Uncle Mike. And as Uncle Mike starts to come down the stairs at the John Wayne Airport, I didn't recognize him. Big white beard, 50 pounds heavier than I could have ever imagined, a tremor in his arm, and a visible limp in his gait. My boys go straight in behind me. And I'm thinking, man, I put him in harm's way, I put them in harm's way. Okay, we're here. We get Uncle Mike's bag. We go out to the car. Now, kids at that age adapt. Hey, Uncle Mike, look at my Legos. Here's my Hot Wheels car. Let's play the license plate game, right? The magic of children. We get in the car and it's uncomfortable. It's a bit awkward. But nonetheless, hey, we're together. It's family. It's Thanksgiving. We're going to make the best of these 5 days. So those who know Southern California, we drive from the airport down to Pacific Coast Highway, Newport Beach to Laguna Beach. It's postcard picture day. And as we're driving, it's a bit awkward, but the silence breaks. The kids are having a good time. And we decide we're going to drive inland. I live in a little town called Coto de Caza, just inland. And as we're going down the road, Uncle Mike starts to shake. And he has a massive seizure as we're driving. Now, in the space of a minivan, he's extremely close to me. I hold on to him like this. And I look in the rearview mirror to see my children. You'd have to imagine their eyes are as big as baseballs. And I said, don't worry, Uncle Mike's just having a bad dream. He's tired. He was up all night. And I'm holding him down firm. And as I'm holding him, he's got a big, thick sweater on. I'm reaching for his heart, and I don't feel it. Now, this is not my vehicle, so I have to reach in my phone. I'm driving with my knee, and I call his ex-wife. His head hits his chest, and a drop of blood hits his sweater. And I said, look, you've seen this before. Tell me what to do. Do I take him to sleep? Do I take him to a doctor? What do I do? She said, do you get a pulse? And the whole time I'm reaching for his heart, I can't feel it. I go down to his wrist, nothing. She said, call an ambulance. I said, I can do better than that. I can be in the hospital in a matter of minutes. And I tried to drive as rapidly as I could, not trying to scare my kids, right? I get to the hospital, pull in front of the emergency room door, bring my children in, ask the nurse behind the desk to help. Bring the kids into the waiting area, nurse, doc, gurney, trying to resuscitate Uncle Mike in the car. And I'm thinking, wow, we're going to have to spend these 4 or 5 days in the hospital. So they take Mike into the back of the hospital. I await family to arrive. And as I'm waiting family to arrive, now granted, this is only about 45 minutes after we pick up from the airport. The social workers keep approaching and they say, hey, let us take care of your children, go to the back. Let us take care of the children, go on to the back. And I say, you know, I'm not leaving these kids. Fortunately, within 15 minutes, my wife was there, then grandma was there. They come get me and say, look, let's go back. So I walk into the back room. They escort me into some particular area, social worker, nurse, doc. And they start drilling me with questions about his medication, his history, what's he been doing, asking me as if I had done something wrong. And I said, I have no information for you. I picked him up at the airport almost an hour ago. And the doctor takes off her surgical hat, looks me straight in the eye and says, your brother's dead. How do you respond to that? Disbelief, right? You take that news the best you can, you see your family, you take care of the arrangements. And I thought, I have to use this loss as a gain. This has to be used as a force for good in my life. I can't let this take me down or anybody else down. There's something I'm supposed to get from this. And I decided it's the addiction community. Maybe I can do something in the addiction community, right? But I'm not an addiction specialist. But the empathy of understanding his journey taught me something that I spend a lot of time on in the world of studying the mind and the brain and change and development and neuroscience. All of us are addicted to something. The body is an incredible pharmacy. Every thought you have creates a chemical. That chemical triggers another thought. That repetition goes on day in and day out and gets stored as memory. We become addicted to being ourselves. When we can't break a particular pattern of things that we say that we want to do, it's not that we don't have the willpower or the desire. It's physiological. It's chemical. So the gift he's given me is an ability to understand the operating system of the mind and the body, to try to go out and do my work to help people move the needle on what they want to get to in their life. And that's something I have to keep alive for him. Otherwise, it will all be in vain. So as you think about the things you want to do and what you're going to do coming out of here, I promise you, time is a non-renewable resource. You'll never get it back. So if you consider putting your word to something that's going to make a fundamental difference in your own life and somebody else's, do it now, because you do not know what will happen next. Let me bring you to this one. Anybody ever heard of the phrase sapere videre? Couldn't it be? I just made it up. Sapere videre, and all these are ancient Indo-Asian, Indo-European words, means to know how to see. 80% of sight is memory. Because of the amount of information that comes at us, we wouldn't be able to navigate the world if we didn't have links and associations of what things were and what things mean. The challenge is that it limits the potential of what we see in an opportunity, in a person, and in our future. So I want to introduce you to somebody who taught me to see differently. And I'll let you know that you train people to see you a certain way as they train you. Walking out of here, you have the opportunity to train yourself to see the world differently and see the people around you differently and see the good and see the opportunity, because what's wrong is always available. This is John and his wife Pearl. Now, those are their Western's name. His birth name is Tway, and hers is Knock. Now, I met these fine folks years ago when I was asked to chair an event for the Young Presidents Organization. Some people in this room are familiar with that. This photograph is taken at their 8,000 square foot home they just completed in Newport Beach, California. You might understand they're from Vietnam, and I'll tell you a little bit about this journey. So I'm asked to chair this group, 55 people who are, by many measures of imagination, successful. Economically, philanthropically, have done amazing things. I'm asked to chair it probably because I don't qualify to be with this group. So I want to take these folks, lead this group who's supposed to go on an event of education and recreation and life experiences. Having done a lot of work in the foreign markets in my prior career, I thought, well, let's go someplace where most people probably haven't been, Vietnam. And in Asia many years ago, all the hotels were the fitness centers for the marketplace just because of the cost of real estate. So we decided to go into Vietnam, North Vietnam, South Vietnam, and Cambodia. Now, it's important to have a person who's on your ground staff, who's going to help you set up transportation and translation and all the details that go with it. I had chosen an American who had served in the Vietnam War. Now, the Vietnam War is known as the American War, for those that live in Vietnam, if they even remember it. Of 3,000 years of fighting, that much was the American War. About 6 months into this program, where he set out a year campaign, formed a committee, 3 reconnaissance trips to go to make sure that this was bulletproof. Because this was my reputation. What will people think of me unless I do this really well? I get a message or a call 6 months into the program from a YPO person, and the theory is you never say no to YPO. They said, would you please meet John? He has a ground team. He has a business in Vietnam. He would love to lead your group. And I said, look, I've already made my choice. I don't want to cross this bridge once again. There's a lot to take care of. It's 6 months away. But I agreed to speak to him. John calls me. And for the next 60 days, he pursued me like no one's ever pursued me. I was so interested to meet him, to either tell him just to go away from the face of the earth or to hire him. He was so persistent. He was like a Jack Russell Terrier. You know what that is? Gets on your ankle. This dude would not get off. I'll send you presents. We'll do this. We'll do that. So I agreed to meet him. Reconnaissance trip, 6 months in, Hyatt Hotel, Saigon, South Vietnam. With the caveat, it's an hour before we have to leave for an international flight. There is nothing in this for you, but I'll meet you if you want me to, but I'm telling you, you're probably wasting your time. Great. Now, there's a lot of email exchanges. We're traveling to Vietnam that week. About 30 minutes before we're supposed to meet, he sends me an email and says, Mac, how will I know it's you? And I said, John, if you looked at the population around the room, 3 amigos would be pretty easy to pick out. Great. I write him back, well, how will I know it's you? He said, that's easy. I'm blind. Pause. 55 people, an amazing life experience, traveling north-south into a place called Cambodia to see things they'd never seen before, and I'm going to have a tour guide who can't see. Now, do I think that's going to affect my reputation? Yeah, I personalized that. But I had to stop and think, this is going to mean something more to me, right? So what the heck, he's coming. I don't tell the 2 guys I'm with that John is blind. So I look towards the front door. There's a man being sight-led, hand on shoulder, coming over to us. Sits down, and amongst the commotion of people sitting down, it's not even recognized that John can't see. Until about 10 minutes in. About 10 minutes in, I get bam on the shin. Like, oh, can't see. I went, I know. This man spoke brilliant English, articulate, clear, sight, sounds, restaurants, things you want to do, things you don't want to do, how are you going to translate, how are you going to get transport, how are you going to get to the airport, in, out, gifts, everything. It was unbelievable. He left, and the 2 guys who were with me said, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. Long story short, I did. I hired John. And I'll give you something that was really significant about it and a great life learning about it. John led our trip 9 days. He was with us every day, something he's never done before, in a jacket and tie. And I observed my colleagues not interact with him, particularly avoid him. This must be a staff member. Who's this guy? This guy can't see, off to the side. What are we doing today? Now, it wasn't deliberate, but it was telling. Because at the end of the 9 days, you have this awards gathering. You get together and you talk about the events and you present funny awards to people who had significant outcomes and experiences. And I brought John onto the stage. I said, I'd like to introduce you to the owner of Trails of Indochina, one of the largest, most successful premier travel companies in Southeast Asia, 10 offices around the world, 250 employees right here in Saigon. And on, John walked out. John had his vision until he was about 17. He contracted an illness that said you probably have about 10 years left of sight, where it gradually started to deteriorate. At about the 10-year mark, he was at a seminar in Houston, Texas, by himself for the travel industry, had a hemorrhage. Lights out, completely gone. He had had about 50% of his sight at the time. By himself. Works his way back to Vietnam. His girlfriend, they had a child together, leaves him. He gets fired from his job. He attempts twice suicide. He determines to go back to his spiritual roots and says, I have to use this setback as a force for good in my life. There's something I'm supposed to do with this. He decides to learn Braille, and he starts his own travel company. Now you can imagine, no one's going to lend him money. And the people that say they're going to come work for him never show up. Can't go work for a blind guy, right? But he had done a couple of things. He had given his word that he was going to use this setback as a force for good. He put his eyes in other people's hands. He understood what other people could do and what he could do for them. And he made a commitment. In his business now, I'll give it to you this way. I spoke to him about 2 weeks ago. And he was on these wooden boats he's building in Myanmar, formerly known as Burma. And I said, man, I can't believe we have a connection. What are you doing? He goes, there's something wrong with these boats. I have to go in here and see for myself. Now, he always uses that phrase, I have to see for myself. And when I get around, it's great to see you, right? So he's walking the boats, the wooden boats, that he's spending his own cash on, $3 million each, to build. And he said, there's something wrong. And I'm astounded. And you get together with John, and I'll say, John, what's going on? He goes, I have this vision for this chain of boutique hotels. And every time I'm with him, he talks about what's possible, what he sees, what's in front of him, not what the obstacles are. And it makes me recognize how limited my view of the world can be, and I'm already gifted with sight. He was a catalyst to me writing a book, and the book is called Unopened Gifts. And each of us have been blessed with a specific gift or set of gifts, and I believe our life assignment is to come down to earth and figure out what those gifts are and use those gifts to the best of our ability. I always wanted to write, but I was afraid, what would other people think, right? Who cares what they think? So part of that campaign of promoting it as a thanks to John is I was filming promotional programs, and I said, John, I have to get you on tape. So if I may, I'd like to introduce John to you so that you can hear through his voice and maybe see through his eyes what his experience is like. Gentlemen, please.
Going away, it was the hell, thinking about it. When the hemorrhage was coming out in the back of the eye, thinking about becoming blind. What is it? I could never imagine. No. Well, what could I do? How can I live? I'm going to lose my girlfriend. Or, I'm going to lose my life. Well, it was terrible. But, the moment I set my thinking, from that moment on, I felt a lot more, comfortable about myself and happier. I'm still luckier than, people who lost their legs, people who lost their mind. So they are always worse thing than what I have. So I should be happy. Why should I feel terrible? I still have my mind. The pain doesn't bother me. When a bad thing happens, and there's always a positive side of it. So people forget about the positive side of it. So people don't see loss as an opportunity. That's, I think, that's very natural psychology of human being. So I think in my case, I just see, it's easy to say loss is an opportunity. How? I keep saying how. I keep saying what can be done. And yes, there's always light. To go through the bad experience, and then it comes out great. So I think again that it's positive thinking really helps big time. 90% of our life is problem solving. So if we're not positive, and it's very easy for us to get frustrated, and it's not good. Everybody lives one life. Life is so short. Why do people have to be frustrated?
Right after that video was taken, symbolic of what John does all the time, he was leaving on a 9-country tour. And he will say, I have to see what's going on. And he has a heightened sense of his other senses, and he has to trust other people. And he says, I don't have the disadvantage of reading body language or facial expression. He said, I have to draw conclusions from my soul and from my heart and from the people I trust. But no one can do that for me. And as I share that story, and as John, I'm fortunate enough to have him in my life, he always makes me think, am I playing not to lose or am I playing to win? What obstacles am I setting in front of myself? How can I come into a conference like this and take amazing information and tools and truly apply it? When is the day that I make the fundamental difference in my own life and the life of other people? John is a constant reminder of me is I have to use my gifts. So as I said to you, I believe words will open doors. Because the words of the stories you heard from my brother Mike and from John and from Pravin in Austria, it was all about words. Everything is about words. So I want to encourage you to think about your own words, the words you use in your everyday life. You can tell most everything you need to know about a person by the quality and their choice of words. Are the pictures painted of opportunity or are they survival? Is it what's right or what's wrong? Because words have intention and words have power. And these 4 words that I hope you will take with you: integrity, doing what you say you're going to do when you said you're going to do it. And on this particular topic of integrity, there's one distinction I think is important. Keeping your word is virtually impossible. Flights get delayed, someone doesn't show up, a child gets sick, but you can honor your word. Honoring your word is to reach out to someone and say, look, I said I'd be there for the graduation. I apologize. I can't be there because I gave you my word. I'll make it up to you if you allow me to. Tell me how to do that. An important distinction. There's always a way to cover it, to take care of it, and to make it work. For Genshai not to treat anybody in this room, anybody around you, anybody in community, anybody in your business small, especially yourself and how you set that example. Empathy. You know, if I can implore one thing from the lesson of my brother is to do what you can to recognize that people want to be understood. Take a walk on their moccasins as you engage them. The world looks vastly different. And sapere vedere, to know how to see. Because you know what you know and you know what you don't know. And by that I mean I don't know how to fly an airplane. But the opportunity lies in the area of I don't know, but I don't know I don't know. And that's the opportunity to learn. So the last word I'll leave you with is grata. And in the Indo-European and early Latin translation, grata means grace and gratitude. You've given me the good grace to stand in front of you and share a bit of my story and my journey and hopefully give you a gift that'll make a difference in your life. And for that, I have tremendous gratitude. It's one thing I didn't know how to practice years ago, but gratitude is a great gift. And you've given me a lot, and I promise you by being in the room with you, I likely got more out of this than you got out of this because you've given me the gift to do something that I believe I'm supposed to do and share some of my stories. So when you leave today, I would like to encourage you or challenge you. There's something you want to do for your life. There's something you want to achieve. There's a dent you want to put in the universe. You've been given a life assignment and a gift to do something with your life. So why not now? And I don't mean a commitment you make to yourself. It's who's going to hold you to it. Who's going to help you get there? Not to find fault if you make a mistake and you're not doing something you said you were going to do, but to lift you back up as you go to make a dent and make a difference in the universe. This company is spectacular because it's got spectacular people. It's nothing in terms of what it has the potential to be unless the people in this room raise it a few notches. Not work harder. Not do more, but be more. That's the opportunity inside of you because you don't know how much time you have and you're here. Cultivate it. So I would challenge you, come by on your way out. Be bold enough to tell me what you believe your gift is. There may be a book in it for you. Or what you intend to do. And at our business, we have a number of tools and resources. I'll send you any kind of stuff I have that will help you get there. Because the consistency that you need to remind yourself every day is this is the greatest opportunity I have in my life. You'll never get this opportunity again, and you'll never get time back. Take advantage of this amazing organization. Take advantage of the gifts you've been given you, and thank you for allowing me to take advantage of this opportunity to share some things that are most important to me, that I hope somebody walks away with something that's going to make a difference in their life and does something with it today. You have my word. I'll do everything for you to help you if you ask me to. Thank you.